The papers proved what my instincts had whispered for months. My wife's pregnancy wasn't mine. The discovery shattered everything I'd built my life around, but it didn't break my commitment to doing what's right. My name is Alec Keller, and I'm 35 years old. I spend my days gathering evidence and building a legal case while living in a small apartment across town from the home we once shared. Each morning, I pass the boxed-up nursery items I'd carefully assembled, the mobile still wrapped in its packaging, price tag attached. The systematic deception became clear through bank statements, phone records, and prenatal documents she thought she'd hidden. I won't seek revenge. I'll seek justice through proper channels, methodically exposing every calculated lie. But let me start from the beginning. I noticed it on a Tuesday afternoon. A single sheet of paper in the printer's output tray. Someone had printed a PDF, but the job hadn't completed properly. Just one page, face down. I almost recycled it without looking. Almost. My fingers traced the edge of the medical letterhead before my brain processed what I was seeing. Prenatal Genetics Center. Patient, Edith Keller. Secondary party, Caleb Foster. The room tilted for a moment as I steadied myself against the desk. You know that instant when your world splits in two? When you realize everything you believed might be built on sand? The paper trembled in my hands, but my mind clicked into a familiar calm. The same steadiness I'd relied on during my Air Force days when alarms blared and seconds counted. I remember the day we'd painted the nursery together, just 3 weeks earlier. The gentle swish of rollers, her humming some lullaby, the sharp, clean scent of new paint that promised fresh beginnings. Now that memory felt like a prop in someone else's play. The rest of the afternoon passed in slow motion. I photographed every inch of that document. The letterhead, the barcodes, the timestamps. Each click of my phone's camera felt like building a wall between the life I'd thought I had and whatever truth waited on the other side. At dinner, Edith acted like any other evening, chatting about work while stirring her soup. I waited until she finished a story about her office before placing the folded paper beside her bowl. We need to talk about this. My voice came out steadier than I felt. She glanced at it, then gave me that smile, the one that usually meant I was being silly about something. Oh, that? It's nothing. Just a stupid prank someone at work pulled. The soup went cold between us as I kept my eyes on her face. I need verification, real lab work, or we separate. You can't be serious. Her spoon clattered against the bowl. After everything we've built? You'd throw it all away over some fake paperwork? I slid the document into my folder, maintaining eye contact. I've already photographed everything, including the barcodes. If it's fake, proving that should be simple. This is ridiculous. Her voice pitched higher. I'm pregnant with your child, and you're acting like someone who found prenatal test results with another man's name? I kept my tone level. Yes, I am. She pushed back from the table, chair scraping against hardwood. I don't have to listen to this. You're being paranoid. Ever notice how guilty people often end conversations when evidence appears? They'd rather leave the room than face what's real. I watched her retreat upstairs, my military training kicking in again. Don't react. Observe. Document. Plan. Looking down at the folder, I whispered what would become my mantra for the months ahead. Truth needs to be documented before love becomes leverage. Have you ever held proof of betrayal in your hands while the person who hurt you slept peacefully upstairs? It's a strange kind of quiet that fills a house in moments like that. The next morning, I called Noah Price before his office hours started. Some friendships survive decades because you know exactly when it's okay to break the usual rules. We'd been close since college, and he'd become a respected family law attorney, the kind of friend you hope you never need professionally. Noah, I need your legal opinion on something. My voice sounded hollow in the empty kitchen. Alec? It's not even 7. Papers rustled in the background. "What's wrong?" I laid out the situation with military precision. The prenatal test, Edith's reaction, the name Caleb Foster. Each detail landed like a stone in still water. "Stop!" Noah's tone shifted from friend to attorney. "Don't tell me anything else until I ask you specific questions. This is now a consultation." A drawer opened and closed. "When is the baby due?" 6 weeks. Listen carefully. Keys clicked as he typed. "In our state, there's a strict window for denying paternity after birth. Miss it, and you're legally the father. Biology becomes irrelevant. Courts favor stable homes for children. Once that window closes, you could be paying child support for 18 years. My stomach clenched. The morning sun through the kitchen window suddenly felt too bright, too normal for a conversation about my wife potentially trapping me into raising another man's child. Remember those training exercises where you have to disarm something while a timer counts down? This felt worse. A bomb I couldn't see, with a fuse I couldn't measure. What's my first move? I gripped the phone tighter. Document everything. Start a log. Time, date, every interaction. Back it up off-site. Noah's chair creaked. And, Alec, protect yourself financially. Today. I spent the morning executing Noah's advice with the same focus I'd used planning military operations. First stop, bank. I moved half our savings to a new account. Legally acceptable during separation, Noah confirmed. Then I froze our joint credit cards, citing suspected fraud. The bank manager's sympathetic nod suggested she'd seen this story before. Some memories hit harder in retrospect. Just 3 months ago, Edith and I had assembled the crib together, laughing about the confusing instructions. Now I wondered if she'd been texting him between reading steps to me. By afternoon, I had copies of everything: bank statements, property records, the prenatal test, stored in a safety deposit box. My hands shook slightly as I closed it. Not from anger, but from the weight of what I was losing. Or maybe what I'd already lost without knowing. "You're doing the right thing," Noah had said before hanging up. "Don't let emotions cloud your judgment. She's already making her moves. This is chess, not checkers." When I got home that evening, the house felt different. Like walking into a familiar room where all the furniture had shifted an inch to the left. The nursery door stood slightly open. I always closed it. Inside, the mobile above the crib spun lazily, stirring dead air. No windows were open, no vents nearby. I checked my phone, pulled up Edith's contact to compare messages. The preview showed my texts, but required a passcode for full access. She'd locked me out. The mobile kept turning, each tiny star catching the last rays of sunset. Someone had been in here, making plans I couldn't see yet. I waited until morning, when the kitchen filled with that pale light that makes everything feel stark and unavoidable. The printouts felt heavy in my hands. 2 months of messages between Edith and Caleb, recovered from our shared cloud backup. Sometimes the simplest solutions yield the biggest truths. I laid them on the table in neat rows, chronological order. Military habits die hard. Each page documented what they thought was hidden. Lunch meetings while I worked late, private jokes about keeping their secret, plans wrapped in coded language that wasn't nearly as clever as they believed. The coffee maker gurgled in the background, a mundane soundtrack to this moment that felt anything but normal. How many mornings had we shared coffee here, playing house while she orchestrated this? Edith walked in wearing her blue robe, the one I'd given her last Christmas. She froze when she saw the papers, then recovered with practiced grace. "What's all this?" Her voice aimed for light curiosity, but landed somewhere closer to wariness. "Text messages." I kept my tone even, professional. "Between you and Caleb Foster, dating back to before the pregnancy." The coffee maker beeped. Neither of us moved to pour it. "You went through my private messages?" She reached for indignation like a familiar shield. Her fingers drummed once on the table's edge. A tell I'd never noticed before. How much else had I missed? They were backed up to our shared account. I slid one particular exchange across the table. This one's interesting. The day you told me about the pregnancy, you'd already told him hours before. She pushed the papers back toward me, her wedding ring catching the morning light. You've been emotionally checked out for months. Working late, barely talking to me. What was I supposed to do? The familiar taste of metal crept into my mouth. The same taste I'd gotten during night jumps in the Air Force, when everything hung on staying calm despite the altitude. What you were supposed to do was tell the truth. My voice remained level, but I felt my jaw tighten. I've scheduled a paternity test at Central Labs for Thursday at 2 p.m. We'll settle this scientifically. This is ridiculous. She stood up, robe swishing against the chair. I'm not going to dignify these accusations with, "This isn't a negotiation, Edith." I gathered the papers back into their folder. Either you show up for the test, or I start separation proceedings immediately. Your choice. Sometimes silence has texture. This one felt like ice forming over deep water, smooth on top, dangerous underneath. I stood up, tucked the folder under my arm, and walked toward the door. You really think you can control this? Her words followed me, sharp enough to slice. I paused at the threshold, but didn't turn around. This isn't about control. It's about truth. When I glanced back, she sat rigid in her chair, hands flat on the table where the evidence had been, staring at me with something that wasn't quite anger and wasn't quite fear. The coffee went cold in the pot, steam rising like whispers into the morning air. 2 days passed like a slow-motion replay of every suspicious moment I'd missed. Each hour clicked by with the precision of a timer, counting down to something inevitable. I'd prepared everything methodically, the kind of attention to detail the Air Force had drilled into me until it became second nature. The manila folder felt solid in my hands as I walked into our living room that evening. The recorder in my pocket provided an anchor of certainty. Strange how familiar spaces can suddenly feel like tactical terrain when the stakes get high enough. Edith sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone with manufactured casualness. The lamp beside her cast shadows that made everything feel slightly surreal, like a stage set for a play where everyone knew their lines except me. We need to talk. I placed the folder on the coffee table between us. The recorder went next to it, red light blinking steadily. She glanced at the device, then at me. Really? Recording our private conversation. Documentation matters. I kept my voice neutral. Especially now. The first tears appeared right on cue. I'd seen enough of her performances to recognize the calculated timing. How can you be so cold? After everything we've built together? I opened the folder, laying out paper trails like building blocks, bank statements showing lunch meetings, location data from her phone, the prenatal test printout that started it all. Let's focus on facts. Her tears vanished as quickly as they'd come. Anger flashed instead, her second favorite tactic. You're paranoid. You've been tracking me? What kind of husband does that? The kind who finds prenatal paternity results addressed to his wife and another man. That hit home. She stood up, pacing like a caged animal. You don't understand anything. We were on a break. The words hung in the air between us. I felt a familiar ache in my chest, not from the betrayal itself, but from watching someone I'd trusted try to rewrite our history. We were never on a break, Edith. I have our text messages from those exact dates. We were planning the nursery colors. I pulled out a timeline I'd constructed, each date annotated with evidence. The lab appointment is scheduled. Dr. Singh will oversee the testing himself. The chain of custody will be documented at every step. She stared at the papers, something shifting in her expression. The mask slipped, revealing a glimpse of genuine fear. Not of me. I'd never given her reason to fear that, but of consequences finally catching up. You can't do this. Her voice cracked. You can't just, I can, and I will. I gathered everything back into the folder. Either we confirm paternity properly, or my lawyer files first thing Monday morning. Those are the only options left. Walking to the door, I felt the weight of the folder under my arm like armor. Behind me, her composure finally shattered completely. The scream that erupted was raw, primal. The sound of someone realizing their carefully constructed facade was crumbling. I didn't turn around. Sometimes the only response to chaos is steady forward motion. The morning light filtered through my office window, casting long shadows across my desk. I'd been staring at the same spreadsheet for an hour, numbers blurring together like watercolors. My phone buzzed. Dr. Singh's name lit up the screen. My throat went dry. I stepped into the empty conference room, remembering how I'd once used this same space to practice my wedding vows. Dr. Singh. Good morning. Mr. Keller. His voice carried the precise tone of someone who deals in absolutes. I have your results. Are you somewhere private? Yes, sir. I gripped the back of a chair, steadying myself. The analysis is conclusive. Based on the genetic markers examined, you are excluded as the biological father. The probability of non-paternity is 99.99%. The words hit like body blows. Each percentage point another crack in the foundation I'd built my life on. But beneath the pain, a different sensation surfaced. The clean, sharp clarity of truth finally breaking through. I understand. My voice remained steady. Will you provide a sworn affidavit? Already prepared. I've overseen countless paternity cases in my career, Mr. Keller. The chain of custody is ironclad. This will stand up in any court. I thanked him, ended the call, and sat in the stillness of the conference room. The morning sun caught dust motes dancing in the air. Funny how the world keeps turning, even when your personal reality shifts on its axis. Noah answered on the first ring. Tell me. Non-paternity confirmed. Singh's sending the affidavit. Good. I've got the paperwork ready. His lawyer voice kicked in. All business now. We file denial of paternity immediately. Add legal separation and temporary orders protecting your asset. The clock's ticking. We move now. I left work early, driving straight to Noah's office. The familiar scent of leather and paper welcomed me as his assistant led me to the conference room. 3 stacks of documents waited on the polished table. Sign here, here, and initial each page, Noah directed, pointing with his Mont Blanc pen. This denies paternity within the statutory window. This starts separation proceedings. And this freezes joint assets pending court review. My signature flowed across page after page, each stroke another brick in the wall between my old life and whatever came next. The pen felt heavy, like it was writing more than just my name. It was writing an ending. Back home, I organized everything into a black 3-ring binder. The label maker hummed as it printed a single word. Truth. Inside went Dr. Singh's results. Noah's filings. The original prenatal test that started it all. The weight of evidence, measured in ounces of paper. My phone vibrated just as I closed the binder. A new email notification from County General Hospital. The subject line stopped my breath. Acknowledgement of paternity. Signed and filed. I opened the email with trembling fingers. The attached PDF loaded slowly, each pixel revealing what I already knew would be there, but couldn't quite believe. My signature, a near-perfect replica, sprawled across the bottom of the voluntary acknowledgement of paternity form. Date, time, witness signatures, all complete, all fake. You know that moment when your mind refuses to process what your eyes are seeing? That's where I was, staring at this document that claimed I'd stood in a hospital, picked up a pen, and willingly signed away my future. I hit print and watched each page emerge, still warm as I gathered them. The signature looked good. Damn good. She'd had years of access to every contract, card, and letter I'd ever signed. My throat felt like I'd swallowed sand. 20 minutes later, I was in Noah's office, sliding the pages across his desk. He studied them, his face growing darker with each passing second. "This is serious, Alec." He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Once filed, these acknowledgments are treated like court orders. They're nearly impossible to revoke after 60 days without clear evidence of fraud." "It's not my signature, Noah." "I believe you." He tapped the paper with his pen. "But believing and proving are different animals. They backdated this to the birth date. Clever. Makes it harder to challenge. The weight of what they'd done, what they were still doing, settled over me like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just deception anymore. This was calculated fraud. "They planned this," I said quietly. "While I was painting the nursery and reading parenting books, they were planning this. Remember when I mentioned that metallic taste of betrayal?" It was back, coating my tongue as Noah outlined what we needed to do next. Document analysis experts, affidavits, timeline reconstruction. The machinery of justice grinding into motion. That night, I stood in the doorway of the nursery. The room still smelled of fresh paint and new carpet, that clean, hopeful scent that now felt like another lie. Moonlight filtered through the window, casting shadows from the mobile onto walls we'd spent a weekend painting together. My chest tightened as I remembered her holding up color swatches, playing the part of excited mother-to-be, while orchestrating this betrayal. I sank into the glider chair, the quiet creak of its motion the only sound in the empty house. Each back and forth brought a new realization. The prenatal test wasn't a mistake left on the printer. It was a warning shot. The changed phone passcode, the defensive accusations, the tears and rage, all choreographed steps in a dance designed to keep me off balance until it was too late. Noah's words about the 60-day window echoed in my head. Time was sand in an hourglass, and they were counting on it running out before I could react. Each grain that fell would make their fraud harder to fight, their lies more difficult to unravel. "If you forged once," I whispered to the empty room, "you forged more." The mobile turned slowly in the night air, its shadows dancing across the walls we'd painted together, across the future we'd planned, across all the other documents I now needed to find. The next morning, I met Noah at his office before sunrise. Dark circles under his eyes matched mine. We'd both been up late connecting dots. He spread a timeline across his conference table, each point marked with sticky notes and cross-referenced documents. "Look at this." He pointed to a hospital visitor log from 3 weeks before the birth. Edith checked in at 2:15 p.m. for a birth plan consultation. Caleb Foster signed in exactly 4 minutes later. My jaw clenched. I was in Denver that week. Project deployment. Exactly. Noah slid another paper forward. A screenshot from my corporate calendar showing the out-of-state meetings. They waited until you were gone. But here's where they got sloppy. I remember the sharp intake of breath when I saw it. The metadata from the paternity acknowledgement form. The digital timestamp showed document creation at 2:47 p.m. that same day. They'd pre-filled everything, waiting only for the birth to file it. "They didn't just forge your signature," Noah said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "They orchestrated this weeks in advance. The form, the timing, everything." The pieces clicked together like tumblers in a lock. I pulled out my own file, printed text messages between Edith and Caleb that I'd recovered from our shared cloud backup. The timestamps aligned perfectly. Edith: "Got the forms. Meeting with the coordinator at 2:30. Caleb: "Perfect. Remember what we discussed about the insurance?" "My God," I whispered, scanning more messages. They were targeting my health insurance, my salary. Noah nodded grimly. "Child support calculations would have been based on your income, not his. And your insurance coverage is better than anything they could get privately." I felt my hands steady as rage crystallized into cold purpose. We need more. We spent the next 4 hours building our case. Dr. Singh's affidavit, confirming the DNA results. The hospital compliance officer's report showing my supposed signature didn't match their security footage from that day. A statement from my project manager confirming my Denver location. The truth assembled itself like an airtight box around their lies. Each document we added felt like another nail securing justice in place. "Look at this," Noah said, pulling up email records. The hospital coordinator sent confirmation of their parent planning session to both their emails, time-stamped, archived in their system. I remembered that day. I'd called Edith during my lunch break in Denver, excited about the nursery colors we'd chosen. She'd said she was just running errands. The memory tasted bitter now. They weren't just planning for the baby, I said quietly. They were planning to trap me. Noah gathered the documents into a thick binder, tabbed and organized with brutal precision. "They planned carefully," he agreed. "But they didn't plan on you fighting back this methodically." We stood in the courthouse parking lot an hour later, morning sun glinting off the windows above us. The weight of the evidence binder felt solid in my hands. Truth made tangible. Noah held additional copies, each page ready to dismantle the framework of their deception. "This ends their scheme," Noah said, straightening his tie. "Every fake signature, every manufactured document, every calculated move to exploit you, it all comes apart today." I looked up at the courthouse, its stone facade stern and impartial. In my hands, I held proof of their premeditation, their fraud, their attempt to hijack my future. The evidence was irrefutable. The truth was undeniable. Inside courtroom 4B, the morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished wood. Judge O'Donnell's silver hair caught the glow as she reviewed the stack of evidence we'd submitted. My hands were steady now, the tremors of anger replaced by the calm of knowing we had proof of every lie. Dr. Singh took the stand first, his glasses reflecting the overhead lights as he adjusted the microphone. His voice carried the weight of scientific certainty. "The DNA analysis was conclusive," he stated, pointing to the projected results. "The probability of non-paternity is 99.99%. Mr. Keller cannot be the biological father of this child." I watched Edith's face tighten from across the aisle. The mask of victimhood she'd worn into court was cracking. Beside her, Caleb kept shifting in his seat, his confident smirk fading with each piece of evidence. Linda Cho from Hospital Compliance stepped up next, her testimony precise as a surgeon's blade. "The signature on the acknowledgement form does not match Mr. Keller's verified signatures from hospital records. Furthermore, our security footage confirms Mr. didnt at a point funds. Keller was not present in the facility when this document was allegedly signed." The judge's eyes narrowed. "And you have documentation of when this form was created?" "Yes, Your Honor." Linda held up a printed report. "The digital timestamp shows form creation at 2:47 p.m., 3 weeks before the birth. This is highly irregular. These forms are typically generated at the time of birth. I remembered that afternoon in Denver, sitting in a conference room, completely unaware that my future was being forged without my knowledge. The memory of trust felt like ashes in my mouth." Noah rose next, his movements deliberate as he approached the bench. "Your Honor, we've prepared a timeline demonstrating the systematic nature of this fraud." He activated a presentation showing screenshots, timestamps, and visitor logs. Mr. Keller's wife and Mr. Foster met with hospital staff while Mr. Keller was verifiably out of state. Text messages between the defendants show explicit discussion of targeting Mr. Keller's insurance and income. Judge O'Donnell's stern expression deepened as she examined each document. The courtroom felt charged with the weight of truth finally exposed. "Would the defendants care to explain these discrepancies?" she asked, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. Edith's attorney fumbled through weak objections about clerical errors and misunderstandings. Caleb stared at the floor. His earlier bravado evaporated. Edith tried to catch my eye, but I kept my gaze forward, focused on the judge. The ruling came like thunder after lightning. Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, this court finds clear and convincing proof of deliberate fraud. Judge O'Donnell's voice filled the room. The acknowledgement of paternity is hereby voided. Mr. Keller is not the legal father of this child. Given the demonstrated attempt to defraud both Mr. Keller and this court, the petition for spousal support is denied. Furthermore, all attempts to access or transfer Mr. Keller's assets are frozen pending potential criminal investigation. The gavel crack echoed through my bones. Relief flooded through me. Not in a rush, but in steady waves, like tide returning to shore. Every documented truth, every preserved message, every careful step had led to this moment. In the courthouse hallway afterward, I leaned against the cool marble wall and let out a long breath. The legal victory was complete, absolute. But as I stood there, watching other lives flow past in suits and tears and triumph, I wondered how to rebuild my own life from the foundation up. 2 weeks after the court ruling, I stood in an empty apartment on Cedar Street, watching dawn spread across hardwood floors. The realtor had mentioned morning exposure, but she'd undersold it. Sunrise poured through the east-facing windows like honey, warming everything it touched. No shadows here, no corners where secrets could hide. My footsteps echoed as I walked the space, each room feeling lighter than the last. The kitchen had clean lines and honest intentions. What you saw was what you got. Down the hall, the second bedroom waited, bare and full of possibility. Not a nursery, not anymore. Remember how you'd measure a space when you were young, testing if your dreams could fit? I did that now, but with different math, calculating the square footage of truth instead of wishes. Back at the house, I faced the nursery one last time. The walls still wore that soft green we'd chosen together, back when I thought we were painting the same future. Funny how paint can lie too, when you let it. I moved methodically, wrapping each item in bubble wrap and newsprint, marking boxes with precise labels. The crib came apart in clean lines of white-painted wood. The changing table followed, then the dresser. The mobile was last. It hung there, those little stars and moons dangling like questions I didn't need to answer anymore. I remembered installing it, my hands steady on the screwdriver, while Edith talked about constellations and dreams. Now I understood. Some dreams are really just elaborate traps, decorated to look like wishes. I wrapped the mobile carefully, though I had no intention of keeping it. Some things you handle gently, not because they're precious, but because you refuse to let bitterness make you careless. The thrift store sat on a corner downtown, its windows bright with afternoon sun. Inside smelled like old books and second chances. The clerk smiled as I approached, mobile in hand. "This is new," she said, turning it over. "Never used." "That's right." My voice came easy now. "Someone else's child should get to enjoy it." She walked to the front window display, where light streamed in unfiltered. With practiced hands, she hung the mobile where the sun could catch it. The little stars turned slowly, throwing tiny spots of light across the glass. You know that moment when you realize you're finally free? It doesn't come with fanfare. It's quiet, like the space between heartbeats. Standing there, watching those stars spin in honest sunlight, I felt it settle into my bones. The legal victory had given me back my name, my future, my financial security. But this small act of letting go, gave me back myself. I signed the lease that afternoon. The pen moved smooth across paper, my signature clear and unhurried. No one would ever forge this hand again. No one would ever use my name to write lies into existence. Later, unlocking the door to my new apartment, I watched the evening light paint long stripes across empty floors. The space held nothing but possibility, and that was exactly right. Tomorrow would bring furniture, next week would bring routine, but tonight I had something better. Truth that no one could leverage. Peace that no one could counterfeit. I spoke softly into the quiet room, not because anyone was listening, but because some things need to be said out loud. Truth kept me steady when love became leverage.